Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be up in our cow barn here. We're going to work on doing some stuff up in the milking cow barn, like I said, where we are here. So I figured we're a dairy farm, so I should actually do some videos about what we do with our dairy cows. So today we're going to work up here and do a couple things quick so I can show you along the way as we do that stuff. So today what we're doing is working on changing the inflations on the beakers. So beakers is the silver part that's attached to this cow here. So the part that we're going to replace it is the black hose underneath it and then the inside of it. I'll get you a better look at that here in a little bit, but what happens is the beaker gets milked and then it goes to these blue lines, and then there's a tank inside of here that goes to right there. And basically, as soon as the cow's done milking, all the milk that's been pumped in there from that cow gets pumped out of that tank, then it's pumped to our bulb tank. So the reason that we have to change the inflations is they're rubber, so over time they start to wear and stretch and stuff, and when they stretch they can easily get tore easier, so you can't have tears and stuff. And then they can also start to collect bacteria and stuff, so the reason you want to also switch them because of that is for milk quality and cow health. You don't want bacteria and stuff sitting on the hoses and stuff, which would get the cow sick or just make the milk not as healthy for people to consume. So why you have to do it. So these inflations get changed every 2,500 milkings, so every single time a cow gets milked is counted as one of those. So for us that's about every 2 weeks. So we're gonna work on getting everything ready to go here. We're gonna work on changing inflations. Here's a little bit better of a view of what the beaker looks like. So the chrome part is just this right here. So to explain this a little bit better, so what this is an air line. So what happens is you have to create a vacuum to help suck the milk out of the cow's udders. So that's what this line is for the air line. And then this part will go on the cow, and then the milk comes out here. And there's a rubber lining for that, which is this, that goes on there. So this is what we actually have to physically change. But to do that, we put new beakers on, so that way we don't have to keep using the same ones, because we have to wash the insides of the beaker and stuff before we reuse it. So we gotta work on putting these in here, and then we'll be able to get started here. So there's a little tool that we have to make it easier, so I'll kind of explain that as we get going here. The room that I was working in was pretty loud, so I'll have to do a voiceover here so you guys can actually hear what I'm talking about as I talk you through what we're doing here. So we're going to get started here. We got the beaker and the new inflation that we're going to be putting in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we got this tool that we're going to hook up to the inflation. So going to hook that up into there, and then we're going to pull it through the beaker. So you use this to help make it easier to pull, and I have a video in a little bit showing you how we actually work that here. But you got to pull that through, and then as I get the bottom pulled through, you just got to start the top of it, so that way the top's where it needs to be before you pull everything else through. This tool in the wall is actually something our valve dealership gave to us. Specifically, the person I think made it for us was the employee named Seth. He really helps with making this, and he's one of the people that does a lot of the services and stuff on our robots. So we're going to bring the beaker over here so that way we can get this thing. So the silver piece you have that I stuck through earlier, you hook that up to a bolt, and then you hook the top of the beaker up to that little level there, and then just pull down with that, and it brings the bottom of the beaker and inflation through where it needs to be. And we'll just put one more piece on there and it'll be ready to go. The one thing you got to pay attention to is making sure these two notches are lined up on the beaker. That way it's not twisted up and kinked off. So that's the one thing you got to do, is make sure the notches that are there are lined up and stuff. So now that those are lined up, we're pretty much ready to go to get the last piece in. Once we got the thing pulled all the way through, we got this silver piece we're going to put in, and we got like a pushing rod to push it all the way through. So basically what that silver piece does is makes it so you can actually connect the beaker to the rest of the hose. So I'll show you how the rest of this works while I'm using that little tool that we have for this. But that's what it looks like when it's done. So we're just going to work on putting the last piece into here. So we're going to do the same thing again like we did with the first one, where we're going to hook the beaker on the lever there, and then we'll push the rod through with the little arm that gets hooked up, and then it pushes the silver piece into a spot. Then I'll show you here in a sec what it looks like where it's supposed to be. So like I said, this is what it looks like when it's done. You got the silver piece that we pushed in there is where the milk goes through, and that other line that I was talking about earlier is for the airline there. So those both get connected to the black hose that gets connected to the blue hose, and so it's pretty much ready to go to get put in. All 8 of them down here, so we got 4 robots, so that means each one of the robots has 4 beakers, so we're going to have 16 of these ready to go, but we got 8 of them ready to go here, so we can get one side of the barn done, and we'll have the other side once we get these ones changed out. We got the beakers all ready to go, so we're going to work on getting the robot ready to go for actually switching the beakers. So the first thing we got to do is put the robot in manual, so that way it doesn't try doing anything. Next thing we got to do is hit the lock button here on the side of the robot. You do that so that way no one can accidentally press buttons and stuff to make it so the beakers would contract or something and pinch someone's fingers. So then we go into the magazine, we hit milking. So what this does is it makes it so the beakers can be dropped down, and then we turn the vacuum off, which drops the beakers down, and then we can work on starting to change everything. So now that we got the beakers dropped down, we can work on slowly starting to take the beakers off. So we gotta use a screwdriver to try to pry this off, but before we get that, so this is, like I said, what we're replacing right now. So that gets replaced every 2,500 milkings, or which for us is about 2 weeks. And this black line, these black lines here, get replaced every 5,000 milkings. So you figure 2,500 milkings is 2 weeks. That means this gets changed every 4 weeks. So we're not replacing it this week, we're gonna replace it next week. And this blue hose gets replaced every year. So this one lasts quite a bit longer. So we're gonna work on trying to pry these beakers off, and that way we can put the new ones on. So now that we got the old ones off, we can work on putting the new ones on. So each beaker has to be a certain one. So if you can kind of see, there's an L and a 2. So the reason why we say that is because the arm here goes to the left to get underneath the cow. That's what the L's for. It's the left robot. And then beaker 2 is the number 2 beaker for here. So get these put on, and then what we do is use the old ones to wash. We have to wash those, then we'll use those for the other side. Might be a little loud here, but we'll try to talk over. If I can't, then we'll just have to do an overview of audio. But now that we got the 8 beakers off of our first side of robots, we're gonna work on coming and taking them apart here. So we already got the first couple done here. So basically all we gotta do for this one is we put our ramrod right here, and then we're gonna use our fancy tool gun. So I'll show you that. We're going to come over here with the beaker, and we're going to try to take the inflation off here so it puts onto the device just basically the opposite of how it was when we were putting the silver piece in. We put it in upside down, and then you just drop the lever down, and it pops the inflation out there real quick. So now that we got the beaker and stuff all taken apart, we're just going to work on washing them off, get all the grime and stuff that builds up on them, get that all washed off, and we'll be able to start the process over again. Work on putting these all back together. Got everything washed up and ready to go, so we'll start the process over again and get these beakers ready to be put on. We're in the robot room here. I'm going to work on taking the beakers off of one of the robots. Then our employee Olivia, that is in the video sometimes, is also our herds manager, and she does a lot of the stuff up in the robot barn here. So she's working on doing the other side. We're going to get these last beakers switched off, and then we'll be good to go. I'll show you guys this in the last one, but the last thing you gotta do, I got the beakers put back on my robot, is you just gotta work on reprogramming the robot. So you just put the arm in here, and then you kind of program it, basically program it again to get the grippers so that they grab this right, because when you readjust stuff, it can change a little bit. So just working on teaching it all the grips and stuff, and then we'll be able to get it back going and milking cows again. So now I got the beakers memorized. Now it just goes through the rest of its motions to make sure everything's programmed, and then once we get the robot where it knows everywhere it's gotta go. So this is kind of like the home position when the cows aren't in here and the beaker's empty, but you just gotta go through all the positions. Just holding this button, you can make it go from spot to spot, and then once it gets to all of its positions and memorized, then we'll be able to put this back in auto and ready to go. So that air means it's ready to go, so we should be able to put this back in auto and start milking. Got the robot fired back up and milking the last cow. So really the only thing we gotta do yet is just wash the old beakers and take them apart. That way they're ready to go, but we won't show you that here, not to bore you. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.